Hi, I'm Mike. I'm here at the 2015 Geneva Automotive Show, representing the Planet-9 web community that is a Porsche-centric worldwide website focusing on the Cayman and Boxster platforms primarily. We did a poll on our Planet-9 membership recently for questions to ask in Geneva about the GT4 and other Porsches if we see anything interesting, like the newly announced GT3 RS. I have the privilege to speak with David Burkhalter, the manager of product communication in Porsche Cars North America. Thanks, David, for having time to meet with me and spending some time to answer all our questions here.
Certainly, Michael. Glad to be here.
If you don't mind, I will be asking some of these questions that were asked online and were not answered by any of the current material that we can find online. But before I start, this must be really an exciting show for you, not only for us Porsche fans, but for you and Porsche itself as well, given that you're releasing two really super cool sports cars like the GT4 and the GT3 RS. Given the long waiting list for both of these cars already, what would you want to highlight from this year's show and about the new sports cars, both personally and from a company perspective?
It's certainly a very exciting show for us to have the opportunity to launch or to have the worldwide debut of two different GT cars at the same time is really quite special, even for Porsche. So it's wonderful to be here and have a chance to speak about the GT4, which of course was announced in February, but this is still the worldwide debut where we get the chance to see it for the first time in the flesh, up close and personal. And then also with the GT3 RS, which, while perhaps not a very big surprise to most Porsche enthusiasts, was still technically debuted just yesterday.
Yes. So one thing I noticed about the public reaction is that Porsche cannot do it right to everyone. Like when you guys released the GT3 RS with PDK only, a huge outcry happened with people lambasting that the real sports car is dead. Then you come out with a GT4, which is like a purist stream, manual transmission only, etc. Now half of the membership is complaining, oh, I can't get the GT4 because I really wanted the track-focused PDK-S, etc. So what is your kind of personal opinion about that, and how do you think Porsche might be able to react to that?
So I remember back to when we launched the GT3 before the GT3 RS, and it was PDK only, the first time we've had a GT3 with a PDK, much less one that didn't offer a manual transmission. And there was some feedback in regards to customers or enthusiasts wanting to have a manual transmission in the GT3. The position from Porsche was, if you're buying a GT3, you are looking for the pinnacle of performance. And our PDK transmission performs at a higher level than the manual transmission that was currently offered in 911 platform. Therefore, if you're buying the GT3, you want the better performance, you want the higher performing engine. We also included the better performing transmission. We continued that theme with the GT3 RS, of course. We have the faster transmission as well as even larger displacement, even more power, lighter vehicle compared to the GT3. So we see several improvements for the GT3 RS. And if I stay there for a moment, we're looking at a little over 20 pounds, about 10 kilograms, so close to 22 pounds of weight savings in the GT3 RS versus the GT3. We have some added aerodynamic benefits along with the extra 25 horsepower, the extra 13 pound-feet of torque. We're looking at a 5-second improvement around the Nürburgring for the GT3 RS versus the GT3. That's just quite a significant jump. On the other side, we also have the GT4, which, as you can see, is what some enthusiasts have referred to as more of a pure sports car in the traditional sense, in that we maintain a manual transmission for the GT4. And really, the GT4 is also focused very much on weight savings, and it's true that a manual transmission is lighter than PDK. What I like seeing, both personally and professionally, is that now we have two different product offerings for two different customer types, customer groups, or two different sets of enthusiasts. If someone wants to have a GT or track-focused car that has a manual transmission, we have a solution for them. If they want to have the PDK transmission, we have a solution as well. So we have, in this case, 3 different products, really 2 that we're debuting here, so that we can more closely tailor our product offering to what customers are interested in.
So now, if somebody would like to get a PDKS in a GT4, because there are still the people that like the sports car smaller, maybe, and maybe a little bit more less expensive as well, but still want to be the fastest on the track, so to speak. Is there a possibility that at some point in the future, no timeline, I understand you can't give that the GT4 might have an option of both the manual transmission and the PDKS?
At this point in time, we only have the manual transmission for the GT4, and I'm not aware of any plans to offer any different transmissions. However, we certainly have a wonderful group of engineers, and our research and development team can certainly look into and evaluate any potential technical offering, especially depending on how long you're talking about in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I personally love both the PDK and the manual transmission, and I would drive the GT4 in either case, even assuming I'm high enough on the list to get an allocation. It's one of the problems that we currently have, at least in the US. I'm not sure how it looks in other world. Dealers have been entering builds to probably see how many people are actually interested, and also to weed out the people that are sitting on multiple waiting lists. We have been told now that the Geneva Motor Show time frame is kind of the time when the dealers will get allocations and so on. Do you have any kind of understanding, or can tell us what the current expectation of allocations over the full year is, both for the US market versus the world? And also, are you planning to release anything like a second year or third year, even if the demand is so high that you wouldn't be able to satisfy it?
One of the nice things with Porsche is that we have significant flexibility. Sure. Did it go to sleep? Yes, I believe Michael was just talking about if there's any one of you out there that doesn't get an allocation, he'd be willing to hand his out to you.
Well, that's if I have that say, I definitely would. Yeah, so we were talking about what the situation is with allocations, and if David can give us any more information about that.
So the GT4 is not a limited edition or a completely fixed production vehicle, so there is some variability in terms of responding to customer demand. But in terms of an expected allocation, that's not something we typically speculate on, so I don't have a figure to share. The same is true for potential future model years or future variants of the GT4. That's not information we have available to share at this point in time. Certainly it can change, and if we see that there is a business case or a demand in the market for additional units, then that's something we would definitely take seriously into consideration.
Okay, thank you. A lot of people, myself included, love the open-air feeling of a sports car, and I'm always arguing that, like the original sports car, like the 550 Spider and so on, these were race cars but without a roof. Now, of course, safety regulations and so on, it's probably better to have a roof, but I know there are a lot of people interested in an open-top Spider version of the GT4, and there has been some Spider sightings in South Africa recently. Could you tell us anything, if there would be a Spider, would that Spider be closer to a GT4 in terms of suspension and engine, or closer to a GTS?
This is a question I've received from a few different people, because in the previous platform, or the previous generation of Boxster and Cayman, we had both the Cayman R and a Boxster Spider.
Yes.
I'm sure, as you know, at this point in time, we've only announced the GT4, and because we haven't made any official statement one way or another on a potential product like the Spider, I don't have any additional information I can share or discuss at this time.
I understand. We're still looking forward to whatever it is that was driving around in South Africa.
I've seen some of these spy shots too, and whatever it may be, I do think it looks pretty attractive.
Yes. So now some of the more detailed GT4 questions that we have received. One of the things that we kind of, in the US at least, have problems with is with the Department of Transportation allowing to get things like the Sports Club package as an order on the car. Now, in previous Cayman Rs and GT3s, you could normally order through the parts department the Club Sport package and basically install it later. The same with the roll cage, but of course it needs to have the mounting points pre-installed on the car. So my question to you is it possible to do the same with the GT4 to order the parts? And does the GT4 that is destined to the US actually contain those mounting points?
So, available from the manufacturer as an importer, distributor, and marketer for the vehicles, we don't have the option to include or sell the Club Sport package in the US, mainly because of the roll cage. So I don't have any knowledge on awareness of if that'll be available from a parts standpoint. And I also don't have as much information on how the roll cage is constructed. Because we don't offer it in our market, I don't have as much information on how it's constructed in the rest of the world. So I really can't comment on if it's bolted in or welded in, and if so, if there are pre-mounting points that already exist.
I guess we'll have to wait until we see the car a little bit more in detail. I assume I can't take this one apart that stands here. So we'll have
I think something might happen within a few minutes if you tried.
Yeah. Okay, so the power output of the 3.8 liter engine, and that comes from the Carrera S, has an output, according to the literature, of 385 horsepower, which is 15 horsepower less than the Carrera engine without the power kit.
Yes.
So some people are wondering, why is it less? Is it to protect the 911, or is it for the ability, because it's just tuned in a way with the air in, with like getting the air into the engine and so on, to basically be at the max of the engine?
We're fully confident in our 911 line already, so there's no concern from that standpoint. It's really the difference in being a rear engine and a mid-engine. So we have less room for the engine to breathe, essentially, in the mid-engine platform. So the 15 horsepower difference is really a summation of the difference in both intake and exhaust for the Cayman versus the 911.
Okay, cool. Now, there are power kits available for that engine, and there are some aftermarket people that are already putting basically the power kit engines, 3.8 liters, into Caymans and Boxsters already. So is there going to be an upgrade potentially that you can like put the power kit on the engine?
I'm not aware of any. It doesn't mean there might not be one in the future, but at this point I've not received any information indicating it's something we're going to be offering, at least from the onset.
Okay. So in the Evo interview with Andreas Proninger, there were a lot of discussions about like all the technical details that had to be changed, new suspension based on the GT3 and so on. Now there's some questions here. Now some people have asked me to ask really deep technical questions, so if you don't know the answer, just let us know. Some of the questions that I have is, when the engine was being adapted, what were some of the major changes that were made, besides basically turning the transmission around, that we have forward gears instead of backwards gears?
Compared to the Carrera S engine?
Yes.
It's really just the changes in setup required for the spacing of the car, moving into the mid-engine. Other than that there weren't that many changes to this engine, since we started with the 3.8 liter from the Carrera S.
So it still has the same integrated tri-sump, not an extra tank and so on, like the GT3?
Yeah, it's not like the GT3 in that sense. It's a little closer to the Carrera or the Cayman in that sense.
Okay. So the Evo interview also mentioned something like a torque limiter that is like integrated into the transmission. Do you know what this is about? I don't think it's the throttle blip, it's something else. So.
I don't have all the details for this. I'm going to receive my specific detailed training later this week, so I hope to have a little more information by next week. There's not a limitation of the torque as provided by the engine. having only seen the same video you have, at this point in time, I think it has more to do with a consecutive number of race starts and how do you protect the engine, the transmission, all the components from the power and torque that's generated from this engine.
Okay. Most of the suspension and brakes have been taken from the GT3. Does it include the GT3 master cylinder, or is it still something you have to do aftermarket?
From what I understand, it's the entire brake system, including the master cylinder,
okay, cool.
from the GT3.
Since we're talking about performance parts, a lot has been made about the Nürburgring times of 7 minutes 40 seconds. Now, I know that the Nürburgring currently is covered in snow, and the car hasn't been probably ready yet to actually do a run, and Andreas Proninger kind of hinted at that in the interview, that they still have to take the car out. Do you have an estimation of like when that will be? And we have a couple of pools going that the time will probably be more than 7:40. Will be faster.
I'm curious about this too, and this is actually a question I'm hoping to ask Andreas later this week, is if the actual test has already occurred. I do know that our engineers in Weissach, among the best in the world, are very good at accurately, and sometimes conservatively, but accurately projecting how a vehicle we're designing or working on will perform. It's very possible that they ran it with previous versions of a prototype, and so they have a very good grasp on what that.
Yeah, I'm sure they are not over-promising. Porsche always under-promise and over-delivers.
And of course, the 740 time is that's the same time around the ring as we had on the second gen 997 GT3.
Yes, or the new
2010, 2011. Yeah.
So on another kind of dimension, a lot of people liked the yellow, obviously, and all the color palettes, but a lot of people are now falling in love with the burnt orange, or lava orange.
Yeah, the lava orange.
That is on the GT3 RS, which is just looking stunning in real life. So some people would like to do paint to sample on a GT4. Do you think there will be a paint to sample window at some point?
Typically we offer paint to sample on a wide majority of our sports cars. I don't have any dates or even speculative dates at this point on when that may or may not occur for GT4, but I do think it's something that would be quite exciting. I'd love to see a GT4 in lava orange, or the other special color for GT3 RS, the ultraviolet. That also might look quite sharp on a GT4.
I would agree. Or Viper Green if you go more for classics.
Certainly, yes.
Now we have a lot of people on our website that live in countries that drive on the wrong side of the road. Sorry, guys. So will it be available as a right-hand drive vehicle as well? Sorry, there was.
I didn't want her to trip.
Yes.
From what I understand, we're offering it in all of our markets worldwide. That would include England and, of course, Great Britain and such, which are right-hand drive vehicles.
Okay, so you guys that drive on the wrong side.
Expectation.
Don't worry, your steering wheel will be on the right side for driving on the wrong side of the road. Another question that we had was, there's a lot of angst where the GT4 will be built. There are some of those people that just want to have an S on the VIN number, and some people that don't care whether it's Osnabrück or Zuffenhausen, and some people still hope it's done in a secret lab in Weissach. Do you have any information where it's being built?
I don't have any firm information. It's my expectation that it's similar to our other mid-engines, where the majority of them are produced in Stuttgart and Zuffenhausen. But we do have the flexibility if demand is there to consider production in other locations.
So it's basically on the normal production line.
That's my expectation. Yeah.
Just having the different engine and the different components on the robots coming in. Good. Now there's, while ordering the car, a lot of people get confused by the configuration tool, especially given that some of the information in the brochure sometimes contradict the information on the configuration, at least at the beginning. One of those is with PCM navigation versus CDR Plus versus CDR. What is standard, which one does include HD radio and satellite radio, and which one doesn't, and so on. Do you have any insight into that, or any kind of way of clarifying some of this?
Sure. So we're very concerned with weight for the GT4. So we start with our lightest system, the CDR system, with the smaller number or the lower number of speakers that are in it, so that someone who really wants to focus on keeping weight down but still have some radio and some sound in the car, they have that ability from the standard equipment. If they wish to delete the radio or even delete the air conditioner, they can do that to save additional weight.
If they delete the radio, is like everything removed, the harness, the speakers, the wiring, everything, or just the
majority of it. So if you delete the radio, you also lose Bluetooth. So you wouldn't have the ability to then make a phone call using a Bluetooth module on the car, because you wouldn't have any speakers to hear the phone conversation playing through. So that gives ultimate flexibility in terms of weight savings. Now, if a customer wants to add an improved or more advanced sound system with CDR Plus, that option is available to them. Or if a customer wants to add navigation, they can do that as well through PCM.
Yes.
That's why our PCM option does not include Sirius XM radio or HD radio, so that a customer isn't forced to buy additional options that they don't want. So we have a few different levels or a few different steps. So if someone says, I don't need navigation, but I do want more speakers and I want HD radio and Sirius XM, that option exists. They say, I don't care about having Sirius XM or HD radio, but I want navigation, that option exists. Or they can combine them.
Now, another question people had was about the sports chrono package, because most of the sports chrono driving capabilities are already built into the car, like the transmission mounts, the throttle mapping, and so on. So the question is a little bit, what does it actually include? Is it primarily the software package, or is there like more to it?
So the Sport Chrono package option for GT4, you are correct, Michael. It doesn't include additional performance features because those are already standard on the GT4. The GT4 is all about performance, so we have the dynamic transmission mounts as standard in that vehicle. Just like on the GT3, we have dynamic engine mounts as standard. So it's a similar approach or a similar strategy. So what the Sport Chrono package offers is the coordination with the application software, so that you can more accurately track your performance or measure your performance as you're driving the GT4. So if you're wanting to document potential improvement in yourself as a driver from one session to another, that's something that this option
does. It actually include additional sensors, or is it just using the standard sensors that are in there?
That's a great question, and that's one I'd like to get a little more clarity on before I respond.
Okay, cool.
To be as accurate as possible.
Now, another question in that sense is, there's a lot, like the software, of course, some people like it, some people don't. And one of the nice things about software is that you can upgrade it. So does the kind of package then include upgrades to the software, or is there any plan on that?
I would think technically that's feasible. I don't know if it is written into the option at this point in time as far as planned updates that are either included or available for sale. But technically, it should be possible if that's the direction Porsche chooses to take.
Okay, thanks. Another question that one of our members asked is that the current temperature gauge in the cars, at least in the standard sports cars, kind of show the water temperature at a fixed 194 degree Fahrenheit, and it doesn't fluctuate at all unless it goes really way too hot, in which case it starts indicating that. So it looks like it kind of keeps it in a, if it stays within a range, it just shows one number. The question is do you know if the GT4 does the same thing, or is it going to be more accurate in terms of what it's displaying?
The GT4 will show a more specific temperature gauge than in the other mid-engines.
Okay, cool. And then another question also on the suspension part is some people are still not quite sure what the suspensions are in the back. Are they McPherson struts, or are they the multi-link struts, or what do they look like?
I believe it's multi-link. I haven't climbed under there myself, and that's another aspect that I'll learn more about, are the differences in suspension in my training later this week. I do know that we're looking at 30 millimeters lower compared to a Cayman.
Yeah.
So we do have a more track-oriented focus with the suspension and the ability to adjust it yourself for certain track setups, depending on where you drive.
Yeah. So, and I will see if I can crawl underneath and see something. We'll see what comes out of that.
I'll lift it up for you. While
okay, that's great. Yeah. So at least somebody from Porsche then holds the car and triggers the alarm. Well, I think that's most of the questions that we had. Thanks, guys, for watching, and thanks a lot, David, for taking your time. It was a pleasure, and awesome cars, and I'm hoping to get one to drive. If not, I'm still having one Porsche to drive at home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate your time today.
Great trip home.
Thank you. You too.